Like when I talk about whipping up the base and that excitement of your base attracting the middle, those squishy independent voters, I don't think this is the way to do it. I don't think those voters are attracted by intense levels of hostility and like just deep negative aura. On a chill Tuesday evening, the presidential debate is starting now. What's up, Genetic Memory Farms? Welcome back to the stream. I'm gonna try to stream it. Oh my God, Trump is already looking haggard walking out. They shook hands. That was a big thing, like whether they were going to shake hands or not.
My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to startup small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result
I gotta say, I don't like how her opening salvo involves tax cuts to businesses.
My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump sales tax,
That's
which would
very
be a
Republican.
20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China.
You don't have trolls reporting you? Your crowd likes you?
Because it was so much money
I'm streaming earlier than usual, so I don't know how much my crowd will be in here, but I'm glad you popped in.
They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people.
So he's already
that
leading
she
into like the
and
debunked
Biden
stories.
Led into our country. And they're destroying our country.
She doesn't sound comfortable
They're
or
dangerous.
confident yet.
They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century.
Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs.
They're not giving me enough credit.
Bounce back, and it bounced back, and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy.
Trump is so full of shit.
The best
was watching on Asmongold stream, but saw you went live. Well, thank you for hopping over
have reviewed
here.
our relative plans for the future of America. That Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
That's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors,
I don't know why they
think my
agreed to have
plan
the
is
mics
a
cut
brilliant
off.
plan. It's a great
Leave the
plan.
mics
It's
on.
a plan that's going to bring up our
He sounds like
worth,
an angry
our
middle
value
schooler.
as a country.
I mean,
It's
he
gonna
always
make
sounds like
people
that,
want to
though.
be able to go and work and create
like
jobs
that.
and create a lot of
Or at least they used
good,
to.
solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's
She
like
copied
4
Biden's.
sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences. That was just, we'll try and lower taxes.
Okay, he brought some
She doesn't have a
zingers.
plan.
He
Take a
brought
look at
some
her plan.
zingers.
She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both
Run,
brought up.
spot,
the
run.
Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries
Literally
that
not
have
how
been ripping
tariffs
us off
work.
for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And you know, if she
the
doesn't
country
like them,
doesn't pay
they
the
should have
tariff.
gone
It's
out and
the
they should have
importer.
immediately cut the
The
tariffs.
importer
But those
pays the
tariffs are
tariff.
there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick.
It
in
feels to
terms
me
of
like I'm watching
workers'
a
rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. "Thank you, President Xi!" exclamation
Like,
point.
why are the
when
Democrats
we know
doing
that Xi was responsible
China
for
fear-mongering?
lacking and not giving
It feels
us
like I'm watching a
transparency about
Republican
the
debate,
origins of
like
COVID.
a Republican primary
President Trump, I'll let you
debate.
respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of
Devin, reality of tariff
philosophies
has
like
never
they
stopped
have,
him from
and
talking crap
policies like
before.
they have. I don't say her because she has no policy.
Devin, how doomed are we? Yo, what's up,
Everything
Gons? Welcome
that
to
she
the stream.
believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago
Not-
is out
not
the window.
doomed yet,
She's
but-
going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country.
Wait, so
she's
what's
a
the point
Marxist.
then?
Everybody knows she's a Marxist.
Oh, she's a
Her
Marxist.
father's a Marxist professor in economics.
Well, that's
and
true.
He taught her well.
But she is
when
definitely
you look
not
at what
a
she's done
Marxist.
to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly,
Then last month,
I just
you
don't
said that
understand
your
why Democrats
administration
feel
would
the
be
need
great
to,
for
like,
women and their reproductive rights. In your home state
go
of
all
Florida,
in on,
you
like, the
surprised
China
many with regard to your
warmongering.
6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short, and you said, quote, "I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks." But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that.
The baby.
Because that predominates.
The baby was
because
born.
They're radical. The
we
Democrats
put the baby
are
in a
radical
guillotine.
in that. And her
It's a cute little guillotine. It's got a cute little
which I
baby
think was
blade.
a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion.
He says
because the baby
execution
is born,
after
is
birth.
okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for
Like, how does any
52
normal
years,
person
they've been
see
trying
that
to
and
get
not be
Roe
like,
v.
oh,
Wade
I get it. This
into the
guy is
states.
delusional.
And through the
He needs to take his lithium
genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years.
Not really, no.
Every legal scholar,
Not really.
every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote.
Nope.
And that's what happened.
Not at all.
Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby
Yeah,
after
no
it's
shit.
born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response
No
to
shit.
President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court.
And they
with
all
the
lied
intention
during their
that they
hearings.
would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country.
Like, this
You
is
wanna
obviously
talk
her
about
strongest
this is what
point.
people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President
That
Harris.
was
Well, there she
obviously
goes
her
again.
strongest
It's a
point of
lie.
the night so far.
I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states. And the states are voting. And it may take a little time, But for 52 years, this
get outta
issue
here.
has torn our country
This debate is
apart.
aimed specifically
And
at
they
the
wanted
tiny
it
small
back in
slice
the
of
states. And I
undecideds. That
did
is why
something
you
that nobody
will
thought was
hear a
possible.
center bit debate.
The states are now voting.
Yeah, but I think
What
that
she
that's a
says is
critical
an absolute
miscalculation.
lie. And as far as the abortion ban,
Genetic
no,
Marine Farms.
I'm not in favor of abortion ban.
There's
but
no
it
such
doesn't
thing as a
matter
ninth-month
because
abortion, of course
this
not.
issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came
Well,
to
I
your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and
I
the
just
House.
hope she brings up
She's not going to get
his
the vote. She
civil
can't get
court
the vote.
rape
She won't even come
conviction.
close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of when they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a
What?
different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student
Why did he
loans.
pivot this
they didn't
to
get it for free.
debt
But they were
cancel?
saying
Like,
it's the
this-
same
this
way
isn't a
that
strong
they
suit
talked
for you,
about
bro.
that they talk about
Why did
abortion.
you pivot to
But if
like
I
one of
could
the
just get
worst
a yes or no,
points you could
because your
pivot
running
to?
mate, J.D. Vance has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind
all
if
fairness,
he has
J.D. is a
certain
bit of a
view, but I
tool.
think he was speaking for me. But I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government, and we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people.
Yo, what's up,
on
Anthony?
abortion.
Welcome back.
Vice President Harris, want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion
It's
ban.
beyond. It's psychotic.
Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied
You should be using that to
IVF
call into
treatments.
question his
What
own
is
mental
happening
acuity.
in our country? Working people, working women who are working one or two jobs, who
Unlikely
can
voters
barely
aren't watching
afford
this. They
child
have to be
care
reached
as it
through
is,
media.
have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting
Holy
next to
shit,
strangers,
212,000
to go and
people
get
are
the
watching this
healthcare
See It
she
in YouTube
needs.
stream.
Barely can afford
And
to
that's
do
just
it,
the
and
See It
what
in
you
YouTube
are putting
stream.
her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to
Yeah,
make
I think that
decisions
some
about her own
undecideds
body.
might be watching
And
this.
that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
You should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
10th month,
Okay, would you do that?
12th month.
Why don't you ask her
Why-
that question?
why don't you
That's
answer
the
the
problem.
question, would you
because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question,
you
would you
could
veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just
And
look
probably-
at the governor, former
Why
governor
would you keep
of
saying
Virginia.
that?
The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats,
Oh,
voters
boy.
across
Okay,
the board.
this is about to
in
get
this country.
bleak for everyone.
Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June,
Trump spent more
President
time golfing
Biden
than Obama
imposed
did.
tough
I
new
honestly don't know
asylum
how
restrictions.
anybody
We know
ever
the numbers since
has
then
ever
have
voted for
dropped
Trump.
significantly.
Oh, I mean,
But my question to you tonight is,
I
why
know
did the
people.
administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the traffic. United States Congress, including some of the most
What-
conservative
what
members of
happened
the
to that?
United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on
was
the border
basically
to
Trump's
help those
plan.
folks who are working there right now overtime trying to
Which
do their
is why
job.
I oppose.
It
I
would have
oppose that.
allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families.
And he's probably
going
gonna say that. He's probably
going
gonna
to
say,
personally affected
"You bit
by
my
the surge
flow."
of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources
was my
to allow
line,
us
bar
to
for
prosecute
bar.
transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the rallies.
Uh-oh, that's
People
the
start
important
leaving.
part.
People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that
Oh
came
my
in.
God,
They're
he
eating
did
the
it!
cats.
He
They're
did it!
eating- They're eating the pets of the people
Oh my
that live
God.
there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again.
I mean, for starters, wait, what happened to the stream? Oh. What happened to the stream? Oh! Oh no! Oh no! They're eating the dogs that killed it.
Specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well,
All
I've
this-
seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
The people on
this is a
television say
clear-
my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good
Yeah.
thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
But the
television.
people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by
Oh
the
my
people that
God,
went
these
there.
people- I mean, that's such a
Again,
fucking
the Springfield
racist.
city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain,
that's-
including the endorsement
I mean, that's
of
not the duff
former Vice President
that she
Dick
thinks it is to
Cheney
me,
and
but I don't know.
Congressmember
Maybe some
Liz
people
Cheney.
fucking love
And
that.
if you want
The
to really
Dick Cheney
know
endorsement.
the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary
I hope
of
you all out there are
Defense has said
familiar
the
with the
nation,
reality of the
Republic
whole
would never survive
Haitian pet
another
debacle.
Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people
Okay, you are
not
naive if you
being
thought he wasn't going to be
addressed, I think the
xenophobic.
choice
I mean, I
is
knew he
clear
was
in
going to be
this election.
xenophobic, but I didn't
President
think he was
Trump,
going to
I'll
go
give you a quick
all
minute to
in on
respond.
they're eating dogs.
Thank you.
They're
because
kidnapping dogs.
When I
They're
hear
eating
that,
the little kitties.
See,
I
I'm a
see you,
different
Suki.
kind of a person.
Suki,
I
I'm
fired
gonna eat
most
you.
of those people. Not so graciously. They did
Oh, she didn't
bad
like me
things
saying
or a
that.
bad job.
She gave me
I
the
fired
stink
them.
eye.
They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people whose were just
Your stream was
killed,
good on
viciously
YouTube?
and
Okay,
violently
awesome.
killed. And I got to know the parents and
Just
the
seeing
family.
it.
They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has
What
ever
Kamala
seen.
Harris can't say
So
about this
when
is the
somebody does a
reality
bad
that
job,
there is no
I'd
good
fire
way
him.
to lose a
and
war.
you take a guy like Esper. He was no
And that
good.
war
I
was
fired
lost
him, so
like
he writes a
15
book.
years
Another
ago.
one writes a book, because with me they can.
President
This
Trump,
is for
you call this the largest domestic
like when
deportation
Republicans
operation
endorse
in the history of our
Democrats.
country. You say you would use the National Guard. You
Oh,
say if
oh,
things
this
get out of
is
control, you'd have
for,
no
like
problem
when
using the
Republicans
U.S.
With local
military.
police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would
guess.
you
I'm skeptical on
deport
how big
11
that
million
constituency
undocumented
is.
immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities
Oh,
be
hey,
going
are we
door to
done
door
with
in this country?
Marwin? Yo, what's up, John? Welcome back to
It
the
is
stream.
much higher because of them.
I'm taking a
They
break
allowed
from
criminals,
Marwin at the
many,
moment.
many millions
I
of
will get
criminals.
back to it
They
and
allowed
deal with the
terrorists.
tribunal.
They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back.
Hey, I'm watching
or
on
we're going
C-SPAN.
to
Yo,
kill
what's up,
you.
Liz? Welcome
Do you
back
know
to the
that
stream.
crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here
No,
is
crime
up
is
and
down here
through the
too.
roof. Despite
Crime is
their
down all over the
fraudulent
world,
statements
including
that
in
they made.
America.
Crime in this country is through the roof, and we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening at
Oh, I thought it was
levels that
Biden
nobody
migrant
thought
crime.
possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI
he
says
ditched the
overall
Biden part.
violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris, I'll
FBI
give you the-
they were defrauding statements. They didn't
Defrauding
include the
statements.
worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear.
She should have mentioned all the
where
times he was
each
sued for
person
fraud.
stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was
Made
found
them go after
essentially
me.
guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice President
to stop
Harris,
him.
thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They
Dude,
talk
a
about
Republican shot you.
democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy
President
with a fake
Trump,
Russia investigation
We do have a lot to
that
get.
went nowhere.
He's coming
We have a lot to
undone.
get to. Lindsay?
Your
Crime is down
campaign
compared to
says
what?
you
The
don't.
1980s?
You supported
Sure.
decriminalizing border crossings.
80s,
Now
yes,
you're
but
taking a
also, I
harder
mean, it's been
line.
going
I know
down
you
and
say that
picked
your
up,
values have not changed.
during the pandemic,
So then why have so
but
many of your policy
It's
positions
been going back
changed?
down to pre-pandemic
So
levels.
my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss
Oh, hey, are we
every
still acting
one
like
of
the
at least
Constitution
every point
matters?
that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about
mean,
fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania.
certain respects,
I
I
made that
hope
very
so.
clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President
And this
of
is
the
why we
United States.
wanted
And in fact, I
wanted
was
cut
the
mics.
tie-breaking vote
I
on
didn't
the
want
Inflation
cut mics.
Reduction Act, which
Let them be
opened new
maniacs, I
leases
say.
for fracking.
No cut mics.
My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest
how many years have
increase
Democrats and
in
Republicans been saying
domestic
that
oil
line?
production in history.
They've been saying that since
because
fucking
of an
Jimmy
approach
Carter.
that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related
I have
to
issues with her
having
proposed
a friend
plan on
when I
that,
was
by
in
the
high
way.
school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. The strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up.
Kill it.
I intend to be
You're starting to
that
lose
president.
You're losing the thread here.
President Trump, your
Well, first of
response?
all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police. She's been against that forever.
Oh, come
She
on, dog.
gave
She was
all
a
that
fucking
stuff up
rabid attorney or attorney
very
general in
wrongly,
California.
very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it. Okay, they're all laughing at it. She gave
Yep, they're
up
both
at
kinda
least
wacky to me.
12 and probably 14 or
Violent
15
crime
different
stats are
policies.
down year
Like,
on year. Now
she
fraud,
was big
wire
on
fraud,
defund
and
the
financial
police.
crimes are going
in
bonkers.
Minnesota, she went out. Wait a minute, I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please.
Oh, he's trying to
Does that
do.
sound familiar?
He's trying to do that. he
went
said
out.
that sound familiar. That's so
went out
fucking whack,
in
dude.
Minnesota and wanted
Excuse
to
me,
let
I'm
criminals
talking.
that killed
Sound
people,
familiar?
that burned down Minneapolis.
Sound familiar?
She went out and raised money
How
to
do
get
you
them
like
out of
it?
jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison.
What?
This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania.
Confiscate guns.
If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it.
I don't know that I
and
would
the
hang out with either
prices
one
were
of those
going
two
up
at a barbecue.
The roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day
I lost
after
track
that
of what he was
election,
talking about here.
they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead, we'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar. But they take 400,
He realized he was
500
shit-talking
acres
solar
of
a little
desert
too hard.
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment.
to.
He realized he was
Thank you.
shit-talking solar a little too
We have
hard.
an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power.
'Cause he wants
which,
that
of course, we
Elon
all know
money.
is a cornerstone
He's like,
of our
I can't shit
democracy
on Elon
and the
Musk
role
too
of a
hard.
president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, well, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world,
turn
not
a
just
January
South
6th
America,
question
they're
into
coming in from
immigration.
all over the world, David, all over the world, and crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David? When are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle, they took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask you.
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple
He was
question
also the president
as we move
when
forward toward
Minneapolis
another election.
was
Is there
burned.
anything you regret
So
about
he
what
could've-
you did
he could
on
have
that
done
day?
that.
Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital.
All he could talk
on
about
that
is
day,
immigration since like
140
2015.
law enforcement officers were injured, and some died.
What the fuck? Immigrants took over Seattle? I thought they were
understand,
just American
the
hippies.
Former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville. where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time
All
say?
I can say, if America votes for
There were
Trump,
fine
then we
people
get
on
what we
each side.
deserve.
Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president
She called
said, the
turns a
former
question
president said,
about
stand back
January
and
6th
stand
to
by.
immigration. Housing is
So
immigration.
for
This guy's
everyone
obsessed with
watching who
immigrants.
remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back.
She should
It's
say,
time to
you should
turn the
ask Mike
page.
Pence about what he
And if
thinks
that was a bridge
about
too
January
far for you,
6th.
well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand
He absolutely did
for
incite January
country,
6th. He can deny it all
to
he
stand
wants.
for our democracy, to stand for rule of law.
Just be like, just
and
ask
to
Mike
end the
Pence. Where is old
chaos.
Mikey?
And
Where is
to
old Mikey
end
P? Why isn't
the
he your VP
approach
again?
that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham,
Wait,
Sean
what's been
Hannity,
debunked?
Jesse, all of these people, they covered it.
What?
If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost
Charlottesville?
every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to
Immigrants,
come through
immigrants,
on the
there you go.
southern
You know,
border?
that
How
should have
come
been a
she's not
drinking
doing anything?
game.
And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down
And hunt some
to
immigrants.
Washington, D.C. during
Oh,
this debate
okay,
because
never
we're
mind.
wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They
I mean,
don't
she
need
mentioned
bills.
before that
have
they
the
tried
right
to
do
pass
it.
the bill.
President of the United States,
And
you'll get him out of
he
bed.
told the
You'll
Republicans
wake
to
him up
block
at
it.
4 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost
like,
in
no,
2020?
that doesn't sound like me.
But
But
I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically.
But
You know
those-
that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look,
Oh,
there's so much
boy.
proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016,
I mean,
you
he did
can't
get
be
the most
beaten.
votes of any sitting
The
president.
election, people should
It's
never
just
be thinking
Joe
about
Biden
an
got
election
a
as
little bit
fraudulent.
more.
We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to
You
have
can't
good
shake your head,
elections.
Kamala.
Our
You support
elections
walls
are
now, too.
bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically.
Like, at
and
a
these
certain
people are
point-
trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing
His camp
them
needs to
come into our
realize that
country.
this
I did watch all of these
psychotic
pieces of
obsession with
video.
immigrants
I didn't
just
detect
makes him
sarcasm,
sound like
lost by
a
whisker,
like
we
your
didn't quite make it.
stereotypical
And we should just point out
racist
here as
old
clarification,
man.
and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No
Republican,
judge looked at it.
and said
They
there was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing.
And I'm going to tell you that I
So
have
it makes him sound
traveled
like a
the
lot of
world as Vice
America, and
President
that
of
is
the
what
United
they are
States.
banking on.
And world leaders are laughing at
I
Donald
don't know
Trump.
if I entirely
I have
agree
talked
with that
with military leaders,
assessment.
some
Genetic
of whom work
reforms.
with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart, Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look.
Well, in fairness, he then had the CIA blow it up. So
he said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes.
I'll give you a little secret.
They threw him out.
He hates her.
She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I think we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, now Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians.
That was a good Kamala
quote. You said that
quote.
9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain.
Many more
Just
than
last
that.
week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization,
we got here long before that.
Slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many
And
of them
ironically,
young people who were
it was
simply
because of
attending
Trump
a concert.
and the Abraham Accords.
Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely.
They're eating our dogs. Yeah, what's up, DJ Belville?
Israel
Welcome back to the
has
stream.
a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far
This guy
too
from
many
another country said I'm great.
innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages
Arms embargo?
out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in
But how?
that
The
solution,
question was, how do
there
you do
must be
this?
security for the Israeli people and
Not
Israel,
what do you
and
do,
an
but
equal
how.
measure for the Palestinians.
And the only answer at this point is an arms
But the one thing I will
embargo.
assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself.
Okay, so no
in
arms
particular
embargo.
as it relates
So
to,
you wasted
as it
our
relates
time
to
then.
Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu
They should have followed up with,
and
okay,
also
but how?
Hamas in order to get the
That's the
hostages
question,
out
how?
and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the
she hates
whole
both?
place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have
That's
never
an interesting. I
happened.
didn't expect
Iran
that
was
twist.
broke under Donald
She
Trump.
hates Israel,
Now Iran has
but she hates Arabs.
$300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different
So, like, what is she like?
spheres of terror, and they are spheres
A
of
Genghis
terror,
Khanite or
horrible
something?
terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career.
But you hate Arabs too, but that's
supported
okay.
Israel
We're okay with
and
you
the
hating
Israeli
Arabs.
people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on national security, including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it. That's weak on national security by allowing every nation last
but I can hear her laughing at Trump.
Year,
Dude, Palestine and Israel is beyond America's control
sending
sphere of
people
influence.
into our country.
We can have opinions, we don't own it. Dude, we send
Putin
all
endorsed
of,
her last
Israel
week,
gets like 60% of their weapons from us. We can just turn that spigot off and they would be forced to do what we say. We do have. They are we are their sphere of influence.
Think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We didn't get involved with Ukraine because they aren't in the UN, so not sure what Trump's talking about.
The House will be in order?
We didn't get involved.
This year,
with
C-SPAN celebrates 45 years
so you're talking
of governing
about
Congress like no other.
Let me mute this.
Since 1979.
You're talking about like militarily speaking, though, because like we are involved to a tremendous degree. It's definitely a proxy war, but yeah, because they aren't in NATO and the invasion has not triggered Article 1 of NATO, which would require all NATO allies to come to the aid of the invaded NATO ally. We don't have that obligation. We don't have that obligation, and honestly, we don't want that obligation. There's a reason Ukraine isn't in NATO, even though they've been begging for it for decades. And we've always been kind of dangling that carrot in front of them. Like, we don't want them to be in NATO because that would have meant a nuclear war with Russia. That's the one thing that we are... Oh, Cornel West, is he still running? That's the one thing that we're desperate to like avoid, is a nuclear confrontation, a direct one at least. So yeah, we'll let Finland and Denmark and shit in. Like, sure, whatever, guys, knock yourselves out. You want to be in NATO? Congratulations, you're in NATO. But that offer was never going to be realistically extended to Ukraine. And it wasn't going to be realistically extended to Ukraine because we don't want to get into a ground war with an actual war with Russia. And by extension of that, we're not going to be sending, troops and shit to fight on the front lines in Russia. Now, that doesn't mean we won't be involved, like, militarily. Obviously, we're sending arms and we're sending people to train. We're sending soldiers to train Ukrainian fighters and, how to use some of the weapon systems we're giving them and how to engage in urban combat to a degree. But it's not, I don't foresee it going beyond that point. But either way, like, shit's getting so crusty over there. I feel like it's weird that thing's been going on since, like, what, 2022? It's been going on since, like, 2022 at this point. Like, both sides of that conflict are being pushed to, like, the brink. Something's gonna have to give here within the next 5 or 6 months where, they're going to have to be forced to come to the negotiating table and come to terms with the fact that, all said and done, it is very likely that Ukraine will have to cede those 2 regions they lost to Russia. I know that Ukraine is making incursions into Russia and occupying territories there. I don't know what that's going to mean for any negotiations with respects to ceding territory. But it definitely complicates the situation. But I mean, I don't know. I just feel like something's gonna have to give in the next few months. This is why you also get, like, Russia has been. It came out in the news a while ago about some right-wing talkers being on under the I guess indirect employ of Russia, Tim Pool and the like, being paid obscene amounts of money by tenant media who were funded from Russia. A lot of the people under that sphere of influence have been recently tacitly, not talking about targeted Russia's ability to do targeted nuclear strikes, and I think there's a reason for that. Like, I think the word they're trying to get the word out that, nuclear, using nuclear weapons to any capacity, whether it's targeted or not, is on the table, but it's not on the table in a world ending, like, a boy and his dog or Fallout sort of way where people think nuclear and they see a mushroom cloud and we're all, eating each other for sustenance. They're trying to soften it by saying, no, it's targeted nuclear. It's targeted nuclear. It's nuclear, but it's contained and it's not going to affect your life. It's not going to change your life. You'll still be able to have the life you live. And I think that's a part of the reason why that propaganda is getting pushed out more and more now, is because Russia's desperate and they've got nowhere else to turn to but
that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question.
Pulling funding from
Ukraine. Do
Ukraine.
You want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are.
Trying to stay awake to watch this.
They're in
Sucks
for
being sick.
$150
sorry to hear
billion
that, Lynn.
less
I hope you feel
because
better.
Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe, like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden.
They
How would
respect
you respect him?
your
Why?
president.
For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here...
They threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president?
Like a
but
dog.
We have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected.
He's really become more and more unglued as this has gone on.
From what we're seeing from President Biden.
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about
the
Ukraine.
Thing that we didn't want.
Understand
Russia
why
bordering
the European
a NATO
allies
ally.
and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris.
But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And
see, he's doing the thing now, too.
Maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about.
I call it the N-word.
Just so you understand, they sent her
he
to
said that
negotiate
before, by the way.
peace before this
the
war
N-word.
started. 3 days later,
not
he
that
went
one.
in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down.
Oh, look at my African-American over here. Look at him.
But let me tell you something.
Are you the greatest? Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay.
They sent her in to negotiate.
What's up, Royal? Welcome back to the
left.
stream. How are you
Putin
doing tonight?
Did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another
From
one.
this fella.
When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strong men instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe that there any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agree with President Biden's decision
today than ever.
to
You know,
pull out of
Putin
Afghanistan.
mentioned the
Four
N-word.
presidents
You know,
said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban.
He's so pissed, though.
The negotiation involved the Taliban
tonight.
getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite
All right, this is
and
very
receive
lived up here. This is some Aaron
respected
Sorkin lib
world
shit.
leaders. And this
Camp David is not
former president,
a reviled
as president,
or
invited
revered
them
thing.
to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility.
Okay, I love you guys, but I can't finish. I can't listen to this dude.
To be commander-in-chief with a level of
Enjoy your
respect.
evening, friends. Hey, well,
And this
thanks for
gets
stopping
back
by,
to
Royal.
the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So, if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement
Once again, there's no good way to lose a war, and that war was lost 15 years ago.
They didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion,
I know the
most
obvious
embarrassing
N-word. Trying to think of what the other one is.
And by
I'll
the way,
let you know in a second,
that's why
Vince.
Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how
both of them are
incompetent
evil. Trump
she
is less evil,
and
in
her
my
boss
opinion.
are.
Just my 2
President
cents.
Trump, thank you.
I have
move
a
on now to race and
radically
politics in
different
this country.
opinion on that.
Mr. President, you recently
Mr.
said of
Fair.
Vice President Harris,
Welcome back to
quote,
the stream.
I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words.
Well, why can't you extend that to trans
people?
people?
All I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out. And I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want
I'll try to keep an eye on the
this kind of approach
ads.
that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was he had owned land,
Involved with
he
the
owned
Taliban,
buildings,
what a quote. What's up,
and
Taco? Welcome back
he
to the
was
stream. How are you doing
investigated
tonight?
because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual
That is true.
who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times
This is also true.
calling for the execution
Fucking crazy, but true.
of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people?
Nobody
Knowing that
literally asked
regardless
that.
of people's color or the language their
No
grandmothers speak,
motherfucker
we
out there is
all
talking about
have
the
same dreams and
aspirations and dreams of the
want
American
a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they
Chilling
come up
and watching
with
this
things
mess,
like
lol. How are
what
you,
she
dude?
just
I'm
said.
okay.
Going back many,
Dealing
many
with some
years,
stomach issues,
when a lot of
but
people,
hanging in
including
there.
Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5. They admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again.
She has to go back to my earlier racism,
stronger.
because I don't have
But
no
they're
racism
destroying
now.
our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies,
I'm really enjoying watching
every
him
single
lose.
policy. And
I think I'll
remember
make
this,
some celebratory shrimp dumplings.
she is
Ooh,
Biden.
that sounds good.
You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the
Hi,
gentleman.
Devin.
She
Yo,
says.
what's up, Carlos?
She
Welcome
is
back to the
Biden.
stream. How are you doing
The
tonight?
worst inflation we've ever had. A horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up, Lindsay.
I want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country.
She should
One
be
who
saying I'm not Joe
believes
Biden more often.
in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life, to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight. as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's
Trump,
turn back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy, please.
She is like, he's like so sweaty now too.
She
It's-
has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move on to
not
other
allow
issues.
he is becoming
fracking
more
in
and more
Pennsylvania
unglued.
or anywhere else.
Okay. Thank
you,
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond because
Trump,
the
President
former
Trump,
president has said
no, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're going to move on, Vice President Harris. President Trump, this is now your third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Correct. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today.
What great economy
And
did he
what I
build? My
said
dad
that
talks
if we
about it,
come
and I
up with
ask, he
something,
can't
and we
answer
are
either.
working on things, we're going to do it, and we're going to replace it. But remember this. I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change
what are you talking about?
it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been
Does
good
he
to
not
just
remember
let it
that,
rot
like, the
and
president
let it go
before
away.
him was Obama?
I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans.
Medicare for all.
If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money,
So
and
he
be
has
better
no
healthcare
plan.
than Obamacare,
He has no plan.
then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan.
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right
Concepts of a
now.
plan.
But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in
Oh, not
2017,
much. Just wanted
you
to see
supported
how
Bernie
the
Sanders'
NPC
proposal to do
debate
away with
goes.
private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you
Which is
proposed
what we
a plan
should
that
do.
included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private health care options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to
Nobody
respond to a
likes private
previous point
health care.
that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president,
I hope the
60
moderator
times he tried
follows
to get
up
rid
with,
of the Affordable
okay,
Care
but
Act.
do you support
60 times.
Medicare for
I
all
was a
still?
senator at the time.
Corner her
when
on it.
I will never
Make her say
forget
yes
the
or no.
early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate, and the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being
one good thing Trump
you don't
did,
like him, you
disparaging
said,
John
at the
McCain.
time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said,
That was a boss
no,
move,
you
though.
don't. No,
His
you
thumbs
don't.
down?
No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president, and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you,
Speaking
the
of
American
Medicare,
people.
do you
Donald
support
Trump said
Medicare
he
for
was going to
all or
allow
no?
Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be
She just won by taking
to strengthen
the road.
the Affordable Care
If
Act,
she stays
not
on
get rid of it.
what she
Vice
has a
President
plan
Harris,
for,
in terms
he
of
will
where
not be able to
Donald
keep
Trump
pace.
stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a
She
lot
made
of
a mistake. At number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money.
Oh boy,
but
it's
she
getting
won't
steamy.
improve private insurance for people.
This
private
is winning,
medical
him coming
insurance.
unglued and
That's
her
another
saying
thing
she
she
has a
doesn't
plan
want.
for that.
President
People
Trump-
are paying privately for
He's taking
insurance.
this L harder than
that
the
have
Cleveland
worked hard
Browns did
and
against the
made money,
Cowboys.
and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait
I fucking
6
wish,
months for an
dog.
operation that you need
She said,
President
why is
Trump,
she
thank
shaking
you.
her
We
head
have
no?
another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the
This is
environment,
part of the
you say that
right-wing
we have
hell
to
we
have
live
clean
in,
air
where
and
Democrats
clean
are
water.
moving
Vice President
to the
Harris,
right
you call climate
on
change
issues
an
that they used to
existential
be,
threat.
you know,
The question to you both
reliably
tonight
good
is,
on.
what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said the climate change is a hoax. And
I can't wait
what
for
we know is
politics to
that
be
it is
boring
very
again.
real. You ask anyone who
She
lives in
dodged
a
the question
state who
about
has
meeting earlier,
experienced these
too.
extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or
This
it's
is
being
not the
jacked
audience for
up.
Medicare for All. I
You
agree, but this is
ask
not the crowd.
anybody
I
who has
disagree with
been,
that. Like,
the
Medicare for All is
victim of
popular
what that means
amongst
in terms of
independents,
losing their home,
centrists,
having nowhere to
everybody,
go.
because
We
nobody
know
likes
that
private
we can
insurance.
actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply
Nobody
about this
is
issue.
going to vouch
And
for
I am
private
proud that
insurance
as
in
Vice
this
President,
country.
over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy
make
economy
Donald Trump
while
defend
we have
private
also
insurance.
increased
That's a
domestic
losing
gas
fight for
production
him.
to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while
We
I have
actually
been
beat
vice
Medicare.
president.
Get the memo?
We have
Yeah, you're right about
invested
that.
in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement
I
of the
honestly don't know
United
why we
Auto
don't have
Workers and
healthcare
Sean
for all
Fain,
like so many other
who also
Western
know
countries
that part
do.
of building a clean energy economy includes investing
Corruption.
in American-made products,
really
American
the long and short of that
automobiles.
answer, just
it
corruption.
includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other
This
place.
would be a good
What
segue
they've
for her to
done
talk
to
about the
business
United
and
Auto Workers Union
manufacturing
and
this
unions in
country
general.
is horrible.
Let's do some left shit
we have
here.
Nothing, because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates in a
Dude, the reason the left has to move center is because of precious little snowflakes thinking they're too good to compromise. I agree with Medicare for all, but that discussion is for primaries. I just disagree with that assessment. I think that it's an outdated political strategy to think that, like, because it's conventional wisdom, but sometimes conventional wisdom gets outdated and becomes wrong. It's conventional wisdom to say that Democrats have to go left in the primaries and then moderate towards the center in the general. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. And in fact, I think that adhering so doggedly to that convention is what gets you this situation where this election is a lot closer than it needs to be. It shouldn't be this close. We shouldn't have these elections that are like, oh, there's a 0.5 percentage between both candidates with supposedly outlandishly opposing political ideologies. It shouldn't be that way. Like, you know, she's she's leading him in, I think, Michigan by 2 points, maybe? Like, it should be a much larger gap. It should be a much larger gap in these places. Like, she benefited from the excitement of the switch from Biden to her, and then picking a legitimately strong progressive as a vice presidential candidate. That generated a lot of excitement. That's where you saw a lot of those big gains. But a lot of those big gains have been evaporated in recent days for a variety of reasons, including the fact that the enthusiasm for her base has been watered down a little. You know, and it's been watered down because she's been watering down her message by following this idea that you have to adhere to the center. But here's the thing. The center, those undecided voters, the ones that every party tries to capture to win the election, they aren't ideologues. They don't adhere to any political belief. They follow trends and fads, and that's it. They think that they have some kind of conviction, and they think that the idea of, oh, I can go either way, either Democrat or Republican, like makes them some kind of like, you know, political savant. But the reality is they just follow excitement. And if the excitement is with Trump because, oh, we've never seen a guy like this before, they'll go with Trump. This is why you get so many independent voters that say shit like, well, I don't agree with his take on immigration. And it's like, Trump runs on immigration. That's his main thing, is immigration. But they'll be like, I don't agree with his take on immigration. I think he kind of goes a little far on that. But, you know, I think he could be a real change agent. And it's like, you don't think that. And this speaks partially to Vince's dad, who, you know, thinks Trump is good on the economy but can't explain why. Nothing to do with ideology or anything like that. It's just there's excitement on that side, and we want to be a part of the excitement. So how do you get people to be excited to be a part of your excitement? You whip up your base. Republicans are fucking awesome at whipping up their base. Unfortunately, that means shit like, you know, what you see tonight, where they're frothing at the mouth about fucking immigrants eating cats and shit. But their base loves that for the most part. And Democrats do the opposite. They don't whip up their base. Like, they don't like to say the shit that they have to say to whip up their base, because then they have to follow through on it. And a lot of the shit that whips up their base takes money away from their donors, you know, takes money away from the people that fund their party. So they have to do this delicate dance of, well, we want to excite our base, but we can't really excite the base. That's why they didn't like Bernie Sanders, because Bernie was just, I'm going to say that shit. And people got excited about him. But then people were like, oh shit, well, if he wins, then he's going to actually try to do that shit. You know, all the money that we make from, you know, all the investments that we have in for-profit health insurance, you know, I'm going to lose billions of dollars if that happens, you know? So even though that excites the base and it gets people genuinely interested, it's the same. It's like being the victim of your own success, which is what the Republicans are suffering from right now. Republicans are a victim of their own success in that they spent decades whipping people up into a frenzy about abortion, getting their base excited about banning abortion, repealing Roe v. Wade. That excites their base. And that managed to get them presidencies that they had no business getting, because, you know, they've been losing the popular vote in all these elections. But once they get to that office, once they get that seat, all of a sudden they've got to put up or shut up. They've got all these, you know, Supreme Court justices they put on the court. It's time to put up or shut up. And they had to do the thing. And now they're victims of that because, hey, it turns out the country actually likes Roe v. Wade.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future.
Not quite.
And the other that is focused on the past.
It was a lot of a discussion
and an
about
attempt to take us backward.
Shit that's happened 4 years ago.
But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about
I wish you would talk about raising the minimum wage.
Hardworking folks a break and
they
bringing
promised
down
that in
the cost of
2020
living.
and failed to do it.
I believe.
So why abandon
in
it now?
What we can do together.
Raise the
that
minimum
is
wage
about
and make that like
sustaining
a central
America's
part of your
standing
platform.
in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so
that's the
rightly
lowest of the
deserve,
low-hanging
including
fruit at this point.
respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator.
If you get
and
young
now vice
voters
president.
involved,
I've only had
then
one client,
you will get to address the
people.
issues you want, but
And I'll tell
until
you, as a
then, expect
prosecutor,
them to
I
court
never
likely
asked
voters.
a victim or a witness, are you a Republican
You
or
think
a Democrat?
likely voters don't want...
The only thing I
Dude,
ever asked them, are you
old people
okay?
love Medicare.
And that's the kind of president we need right now.
So what's the difference to them?
It's
not like they're going to lose Medicare if Medicare for all happens.
I intend to be
if
a
anything,
president
you would just
for all
communicate it to them. Yeah,
Americans
we're just going to expand Medicare
and focus
from
on what we can do over
from
the next
starting
10
at age
and
55 to
20
starting
years
at age
to
0.
build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
Why are you loyal to Putin?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline.
I don't think this is
We're
the
being
inspiring
laughed at
message
all over the
that
world.
he thinks
all
it
over
is.
the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals.
You know he wasn't going to
our
let,
country.
he wasn't going to get
The
away
worst
from
president,
this
the
without
worst
mentioning
vice president.
all
in
these
the
people
history
coming into
of
the
our
country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from
He
here
was
in
so
Philadelphia
sweaty
at the
by the
National
end of that.
Constitution Center.
He was just
I'm
a
Lindsay
sweaty,
Davis.
And I'm David Muir.
unhinged
Thank you for watching
mess.
here in the
Oh boy, what an interesting ordeal that was. I think all said and done, all told, Trump did not do himself any favors by becoming so radically unhinged, unglued, so early on in all of that. I think that being a terminally online weirdo that he is, screeching at the top of his lungs about immigrants eating cats and shit, probably not gonna sit very well for him. I mean, Kamala did better than I thought she would. Obviously, not the kind of candidate that I want for my politics, but she didn't shit the bed. There's that much. She did not do a Joe Biden, and I guess at this point, you know, that's all you can really hope for. She had some really good, strong lines, whatever she talked about abortion, I think that was like the strongest of her for the night. She had some pretty good prosecutorial moments where she would like kind of lay out a case against Trump in the way that you might lay out a case in court, and I think that was purposeful. She's leaning into the experience of being an attorney, but really, more than anything she individually did, I think it's just Trump being so unhinged and like he kept going on and on about immigrants in like the most, racist uncle kind of way, like a Gran Torino, get off my lawn, you rotten punks kind of way, which I'm sure plays great for his base, but I don't know if that's what's going to be so appealing towards, like when I talk about whipping up the base and that excitement of your base attracting the middle, those squishy independent voters, I don't think this is the way to do it. I don't think those voters are attracted by intense levels of hostility and like just deep negative aura. Like there was a lot of negative aura coming from him tonight. Like people like positivity. They like the idea of voting for something good to happen, right? And I guess if I was going to critique Trump's approach from the right, if I was going to put on my hyper-conservative hat, if I put on my hyper-conservative hat, I would be delusional and think that everything went swimmingly for him. But speaking realistically, I probably would have said, hey, look, if you're going to go hard on immigration, you have to go hard on it in a way that offers some positive benefit towards voters. Voters aren't going to respond super positively to, you live in an ashen hellscape of mongoloids swarming over from the border. Vote for me. Like that's not the way to go. You could talk about all the people coming from the border, but you have to segue that somehow into something positive, into something that people want to be attracted to. Like people want to be attracted to your agenda, right? So whip up your base with that immigration shit, but then you have to make sure you make it appealing to the people that aren't in your base. And that's a part of why I think progressive politics would work so much better in the general rather than just a primary, is because a lot of that stuff is populist, and populist from a left perspective and not the right perspective, because right populism is fucking terrifying shit. You heard it tonight. But left populism gets people excited because it's like, oh man, we could live in a world where, I don't have to worry about healthcare. Like I could switch my job because I'm not going to lose my healthcare by switching jobs. I can see the doctor that I used to see about a year ago but fell out of my network because now I don't have to worry about doctors being in and out of my network. Oh, that sounds awesome. Yeah. Oh, we're going to build bullet trains, connecting all the major cities. That sounds cool. I could finally just get in a train and go to Dallas and not have to sit in my car for 3.5 hours. That sounds awesome. I want to do that. I want to live in that world. Like, you always have to leave people saying to themselves, I want to live in that world. And that vision, that apocalyptic vision of like, a World War Z flood of evil immigrants eating cats and shit or whatever, with no positive, offer on the other side, does not leave anyone thinking, I want to live in that world. And I guess the counter argument to that is it inspires enough fear. You try to get people to vote out of fear, but I guess that play only works if your opponent has absolutely nothing to offer. If you are well liked and your opponent has nothing to offer. Donald Trump is not well liked. He's a deeply reviled public figure, which is, the only reason why most of his political opponents, whether it's Biden or Harris, even have an ability to stick around in the race despite not having detailed a great deal of their agenda. But Harris, for her part, she's not offering a whole lot of excitement. She's just basically offering competency, which I guess for some subset of people, that's enough. Like this whole small business tax credit shit, that's not going to get people excited. Like, even any small business owner will tell you that their real barrier for growth is getting loan access. It's not taxes on the back end. It's just getting the loans up front so they could operate, so they could open and operate. Like, that's the issue, So like the tax for small business thing isn't gonna excite, much of anybody if they even give it a second thought. The home buyer credit, I'm sure that gets people excited too, but honestly, like, more detail needs to be discussed about how that's actually going to be administered and how you're going to keep home buyers from just raising the price by 25 grand, and how it's going to be different from what Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac did when they were offering down payment assistance prior to the subprime mortgage crash. She doesn't really talk about like regulating the regulations for Wall Street, regulations for the financial industry, which is a very popular thing to talk about. She didn't talk about tonight. Maybe I missed it, but she didn't mention going after price gougers. Maybe she mentioned it when they talked about inflation and I missed it, but I don't think so. That's a popular one. That's a real popular one. I mean, I guess maybe that would explain why she didn't mention it if she didn't. But, going after price gougers is a popular one. But, she's so afraid. Like, the Democrats are so afraid of leaning into, like, their popular messages. And it's infuriating because they're trying so hard to win these elections by doing the least amount possible. Like, we're going to do the least we possibly can to win an election. And you end up going into election day down or up by a percentage point when you should be up by like 10. Nobody should be struggling to beat this fucking guy. The guy that we watched tonight just lose his shit in a sweaty, unhinged mess. Nobody should be struggling in states like Michigan. No Democrat should be struggling in states like Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania to overcome somebody like that. But you will struggle if you fail to captivate people with like an exciting agenda. They're hoping that dislike for Trump is enough. And it might be. Dislike for Trump might be enough, especially after his performance tonight. It's a solid reminder of what there is to dislike about him if you're someone that's prone to dislike him. But I worry that if that's their calculus, then you could be in for an upset. But I think ultimately, that for tonight, Kamala came out on top. I'm curious to see what polls and focus groups and shit say about it. But that's just my read on it. Oh, let's see. He's in similar shoes to Biden now. The tired and crazy old man. Yes, that's how he came across too. And a part of that also was in contrast to some of the answers Kamala gave. Like, she definitely veered off into word salad territory here and there, but for the most part, she was very coherent and very erudite in her delivery of her messages. Devin, you and I are progressives. Until we have more numbers, we will never get our candidate. I think that's partially true. Here's the thing, like, you can get, and I strongly believe this, and maybe this belief is rooted in fantasy. I'm willing to accept that. But I believe that it is possible, so long as you don't call yourself a Democrat, honestly, it's possible for you to get a conservative to vote for progressive things. I mean, shit, they do it in Florida all the time. They legalize marijuana and do all sorts of, like, if there's a progressive proposition on a ballot in a conservative state, that progressive proposition will probably win. Like when Trump was talking about, Kansas, they voted probably more liberal than you thought they would on abortion, but they voted for abortion. Yeah, like, any conservative place will vote for a progressive policy if Democrat isn't attached to it. So I think there are a lot of structural things and systemic things about how our elections are handled and how our parties are run that that's more of a barrier there than like convincing the voters. I think convincing the voters is the low-hanging fruit. The hard part is the actual party apparatuses. Apparatusi? I don't know which one that is. I understand what you're saying, but the party follows voters, not the other way around. I mean, no, it should be the party following voters, but that's not how it is. The Democratic Party forces the voters to follow the party. It should be the party following the voters. If the party followed the voters, then we'd have raised the minimum wage. We'd have the PRO Act. We'd have the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. We'd have the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. We would have nuked the filibuster to get all of those, and we would have beat the shit out of Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin for opposing it. And we would have told the Senate parliamentarian to fuck off. George W. told the Senate parliamentarian to fuck off. You know, when the parliamentarian tried to stop him from doing something, he fired her. Or him. At the time, it was a him. If tonight's debate somehow convinced people on the fence to vote for Trump, I'm seriously concerned for their mental well-being. That's what I'm saying, is like, I don't think he did himself any favors at all. Like, at all. Like, as bad as... So this wasn't as bad as his debate with Biden was for Biden, but this was bad for him in the same type of way. Maybe not to the same degree, but to the same type of way. Maybe close, honestly. It just depends on how receptive people are to, they're eating your cats and dogs. If people are not receptive to it, then it might be as bad as the Biden thing. But the Biden thing was uniquely awful. The Biden stuff was uniquely awful. Oh, Vince. This is what I was referring to earlier.
About World War III, because we have stupid people dealing, and you could possibly end up, better chance today than ever. You know, Putin mentioned the N-word. You know what the N-word is? It's, no. It's the nuclear word. He mentioned the N-word.
No. The N-word! Do you know what that? No. That no means he heard it from the audience. Someone in that audience.
Oh, look at my African American over here. Look at him. Are you the greatest? Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay. So we have.
I need this one down.
World War III, because we have stupid people dealing, and you could possibly end up, better chance today than ever. You know, Putin mentioned the N-word. You know what the N-word is? It's, no. It's the nuclear word.
No. Look at these guys. Look at these two black guys in there. You know that they got worried as soon as he said the N-word. Look at his look on his face right there. Look at his look on his face. He was like, what the fuck? What's about to happen here, yo? I don't know if I'm getting paid enough to be back here. And then once they realized...
Nuclear word.
Oh, nuclear. Okay, it's nuclear. It's nuclear. It's false alarm, y'all. False alarm. False alarm. Look at this guy. He thought that was fucking hilarious. It's like, false alarm. Nope. We thought this was going to go a different direction. We were looking for our exit strategy, but no. Wrong N-word.